Okay. So we are continuing B'ezrat Hashem, Torah Samech Beis. We learned.
Hello.
Hello. We just started.
Oh,
Okay, no, it's. Oh, it's now there's no room for all the goodies on the table. Okay. Hold on, let me just put this on hold. Yes. So we explained how in Torah 62, we are like finishing Seif Hay. We went at great length. Hold on. All right. What's going on? All right. So we said that in order to complete the tikkun of being able to bring about Yichud Kudsha B'Richu Shchintei by eating, you have to have the emunah has to be complete. We went through the whole process, how in order for the emunah to be complete, the dibur has to be released from the Sitra Achra, the mitzvot dibur, and then the dibur itself is already taking out the rest, magnetizes the rest of the holy sparks from the klipot. The klipot remain empty, and when they can remain empty, the klipot are the things that gives the taste, the geschmack of the Avodah Zarah. It's a klipot. Once the klipot run out of juice, batteries are out, everything comes to a screeching halt. And it's like, imagine, when you watch a ball game, okay? You have to have a certain kind of a state of mind that allows you to suspend your seichel.
What?
Suspend, put your seichel on pause. Hit the pause button on your seichel. Because if your seichel keeps on running, what's the point if somebody can hit a ball with a baseball bat? What's the point? But being that there is a Torah, and the seichel, people have no taste for life. They have to have something to give them taste to their lives. Their lives are empty. What do you want from them?
Who's that?
Anybody who is not because of the kedusha. The problem is that because Baruch created the world like that people need to have meaning. Meaning. That something means something in their lives. If you're a Yankee fan, the meaning is that the Yankees are winning. If you're a Mets fan, it means that the Mets are winning. If the Mets are losing, why are people whining and crying that that their sports team is losing? What do you care? Because they assign meaning, and it represents them. And there's especially it's a horror. Benu says in Kuf Tzadik Beis, I think. that when a person has foreign thoughts in his head, especially machshavas hirurim, when a person has machshavas and hirurim, I'm so mekana you over the way you say brachas. Yeah, I'm so jealous of you. Anyhow, so when does a person have machshavas and hirurim? Because a person has not purified his physicality yet. And when people manage to clean themselves out from the klipo, they don't have these kind of thoughts anymore. But until then, they find themselves fantasizing on things that are bad stuff. Rabbeinu says it, hirurim, these kind of, he said the sitra of mother is the side of death. Rabbeinu says, here people say, okay, what's the big deal? Just in my own mind, I'm by myself. So I'm watching a movie in my mind. I'm not doing anything. I'm not hurting anybody. It's like Rabbeinu says, no, from the hirurim it becomes a real metzius. Because in truth, when you think about it, ultimately, the only thing that you really have, is the ratzon. You want to do what a Kadosh Baruch Hu does. So what is the deed? What are the mitzvahs? When do you learn Torah? Learning Torah and doing mitzvahs is an expression of the fact that you want to do what a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants so much that you actually learn Torah and you perform mitzvahs. But the main thing is the ratzon. You have to want until you do. Because if you just want and you don't do, it means you don't want. You want so.
Not the rewards.
Yeah, you want the rewards, whatever it is. Even let's say that you want bemet. Forget about if you really want bemet, but you're not that motivated. So you don't do. If you don't do, that means that the motivation is lacking. The Rabbeinu says it's the main thing is the ratzon, is the cheshek, is the craving, to do Dor Shebekdusha. The doing is the proof that you want it enough. It says if a person has a mania, an obstacle that he cannot overcome, it means that what he needs to do is he has to strengthen his cheshek until the cheshek will be stronger than mania. When the craving, when the will is stronger than the obstacle falls. Not only that it falls, but it becomes a kli for you. To reach the madrigas that you want. It becomes your friend. If a person, let's say, wants to buy an apartment, you never owned an apartment, never bought an apartment, doesn't know how to go about it, doesn't have any credit, doesn't have whatever. He wants to buy an apartment, so the huge manias, huge obstacles. He goes to the bank, nobody wants to talk to him. So if he says, okay, that's it, I'll never be able to buy an apartment, just let it go, and he'll never have an apartment. But if this person is motivated, I'm going to have an apartment. So he's going to apply here, he's going to apply there, he's going to find eitzes here, eitzes there. Mishamayim, they'll bring the seed that he really wants. They'll bring him the wherewithal, the eitzes, whatever it is, to find the apartment, to get the credit, to get the mortgage, whatever it is that needs to be done. Once he has done it, how he was able to overcome all the obstacles? The answer is he wanted to. How did Rabbi Abraham build this medrash? Because he wanted to. So but if a person, imagine that suddenly the klipos, which is a store of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the store of the Seichel Amiti, imagine 50,000 people in Yankee Stadium, suddenly everybody sees the truth. This is an idiotic waste of time. It doesn't mean anything. Can you imagine? They still need to fill themselves with something. They need for meaning. People need a meaning. People without meaning commit suicide. Or they take assault rifles and they shoot, like Columbine High School, whatever it is that they did. Because they need meaning.
That's why people go to these big football games.
Yeah, because they assign meaning to it. Let's say that it matters and it works. And there's a secret in the Indian of Dafka, why sports games. As Rabbeinu says, I think it's the Resh Tzadik Beis, if I remember correctly, that when a person has these thoughts in his mind, and bad thoughts in his mind, and he fights with them, Kadosh Baruch Hu has great hanoah from it. And Rabbeinu brings from Mashal, he says, like, they're the animals, the king and the royalty and whatever it is. So they have animals fight against one another, compete, horse racing, dog racing, whatever it is. And there's great pleasure in watching it. It gives them a meaning, but it also says the fact that where does it come that people get enjoyment out of a sports game? Out of a sports game, to the point that these guys that are good at it are getting paid millions upon millions of dollars. Because Mishamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a Noah when a Jew is fighting against his Yetzer Hara. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends thoughts in his mind. That's the Houston Astros. And your Yetzer Hara is, as it were, the Yankees. And your Yetzer Tov, which is your Yankees, is beating the Houston Astros, which is the Machshava Zoris, which is the Yetzer Hara. In the Shoirish, it is extremely holy. That's Avodas Hashem. When it comes down, that fight between the good and the bad, our side against their side, that's Avodas Hashem. When it comes down to this world and it goes down by the Goyim, it becomes a baseball game or a basketball game or a football game or whatever it is. And you can see it. You can see that there is a divine spark that fell into these things. How do you know? I don't know if you ever noticed, but an athlete during during his career, he's like a god for them. He signs autograph for you, and whatever it is, it's like there's an aura. He's like there's something supernatural about him because he's an athlete. Because he's a Michael Jordan. I don't know, whatever it is. The minute that they retire, they become nobody. They retire. They become nobodies. Yeah, if they get fans water, if somebody will buy them a beer.
No, but they get promoted to all kinds of stuff.
Which means they try to get more juice out of, to squeeze more out of the lemon. You know, so they elected the ball to the Hall of Fame. But when an athlete is current, I mean, he's walking. It's like there's an aura about him. It's like bigger than life. The minute he retires, okay, it's another bum. Like that. Did you notice that?
I used to play a lot of sports.
Yeah, but I'm talking about somebody who was a major league player. When he was a player, everybody want to be with him and around him, whatever it is, and he admires, get paid a lot of money, and as a whole, No, I'm talking about rich men. They even if they have money afterwards, you know, but he retires, and suddenly all the aura falls off, all the magic falls off. He is no longer a fighter.
How are you saying that's the divine that fell into there?
Because all the things, all the taivas that are in this world are sparks of kedusha that fell down to the klipas. That's what we're learning about. That inyan of nitzachon of over the Yetzer Hara, that's the spark of midas gvura that fell down to the klipot. As long as this holy spark is in the klipa, you go to ball games. You whatever it is, it's still going on strong. If you were to take that, and this is what we're talking about, the dibur takes out the divine spark from the klipot. Suddenly, you go into a ball game. It's like going to a construction site. So I said, "You want to see how I take this 2x4 and I hit this wall? Watch me. I should be getting millions for hitting it with a 2x4 a wall." Excuse me. What are they talking about? No, I don't know why this guy is hitting a ball with with a stick. He gets paid million, and I take a 2x4 and hit, I don't know, another 2x4. Everybody says, "You're nuts. What's wrong with you? Go to work." That's it. Because there's no nitzozos the kedusha in that klipa. When you take out the kedusha, it becomes meaningless.
Well, what about the guy who hits the ball? He's a part of the team. He's part of the whole.
That means that the klipa that gives the highest to that still have the nitzozos the kedusha inside it. The holy spark from the nitzachon the kedusha is still there.
That's okay.
What do you mean it's okay?
I mean, you said that Hashem likes.
When it comes to you and avodas Hashem, when you get the bad thoughts in your mind, and because of Ratzon Hashem, you overcome them, that's what Hashem has Zanoah from. Hashem has no pleasure from the Yankees. It's like, what do you want?
So the Kedusha, yeah,
But when that Nikuda of Kedusha trickles down and falls into the Klipos, so they get great Hanoah from playing games. From gambling, from whatever it is, from drugs, whatever. So comes the question, how do you elevate the nitzozos the kedusha? How do you seal off? We said that klipos, they suck from the achoraim, from the backside, from the behind the kedusha. This is when they suck. How do you? We said last week that it's like vermin and rats and pigeons that eating from the garbage, from the how do you control, besides direct extermination, how do you prevent them from proliferating? It says you cover the garbage cans, you cover up their access to food.
Or you put down the poison.
Beseder. So I'm saying one hand is putting out the poison. Yeah, but if there's no food, they will not come. If there's food, okay, now you have to worry about them. You put poison, you put this, you put traps, whatever it is. But if there's no food, they will not come. Mice don't infest an empty house.
I'll tell you something somewhat humorous.
Nobody can hear you.
I'll tell you something somewhat humorous about this notion. I was talking to a non-form friend of mine from high school in St. Louis, and he said, so what do you think about the Cardinals? Okay. So that's the baseball team. So I said, one of the things that I really miss about Missouri is the state bird is the cardinal, and they're just beautiful. I used to love hearing them sing. And he said, what are you talking about?
All right. You're teasing here. Anyhow.
But it was true. I was more interested in.
Oh, you said that, but you know what you're talking about.
More
Okay.
interested in what?
Watching the beautiful birds.
Oh.
So what we say, so Rabbeinu says that the taivus is achila v'shtia, eating and drinking. That is the main taivus. The three ministers of Parai, and they derive their chayats from Parai. Parai, we said, is the letters ha'orev, behind. You have to seal it up. You have to cover up the garbage can. How do you cover up the access to sustenance to the klipot? And when it says Dryness, you fast. And it says, because when a person fasts, it says when, and Rabbeinu says a concept which, when you first hear it, this is just a second. You mean I'm supposed to make it wet, to make it dry? And whoa, say it again. I'm supposed to make it wet, to make it dry. Just a second. So the bad guys are making it dry. You're not supposed to make it wet in order to make it dry. What's going on? Oh, wait. So we have to halt up a little bit and understand like this. When Parai is yonik, is leaching from the Kedusha, he is in the neck. What he does, this is where the big dibur is. The dibur is the shechina, dibur is the. So, what does the tumor would do in order to harm the dibur? How can you have a politician who's coming to give a speech? What's the best way to shut him up?
Well, in Ecuador, they just shot him.
Okay, that could work. But anyhow, you make him hoarse. You can't talk. Make him hoarse.
Make yours.
Horse.
They're gonna-
Horse. Not horse like that. Horse, he can't talk. Horse.
Just keep telling him you can't hear him. Can you talk louder?
Right. Make him hoarse. So Paroi is holding on Meitzar Hagorin, the straits of the throat. And he is causing dryness, hoarseness to the dibur. Obviously, we're talking about a mashal. It's not a physical thing. We're talking about a mashal here. So what do you do when a person is hoarse? He's standing there by the podium, and he's speaking to people, and suddenly he's becoming hoarse. So what do? You give him a glass of water, right? You give him a glass of water.
Yeah,
See?
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
So the way to solve the problem of hoarseness, now we're talking about spiritual kind of hoarseness. Spiritual hoarseness is when you can't talk to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Your voice may be as pretty as Pavarotti, but you come to talk to Kadosh Baruch Hu and you can't say a word out of your mouth. It means that you're spiritually hoarse. And in order to solve that, you have to bring water. It's called Mei Me'er Chasadim, the waters of Chasadim. How do you bring the waters of Chasadim? You fast. Dry, wet, you solve it by not eating, not drinking, making it dry. And Rabbeinu explains why does this work. This is a very deep and profound concept. So it'll take us some time to sort of like go over it and understand that, you know, what we're talking about. It's very sophisticated. Rabbeinu says is the way that you do it is through tightness. He says, why does tightness have such a koyach? So I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. Why does this have a koyach to seal off para, you know, the klipos, the taivas? And he says, because the inyan of tightness, the value of tightness, is not the fact that you're not eating now. The value of tightness is if you accept it upon yourself to fast, and now it's already 12 hours since you stopped eating. When, you know, before Shkia, whatever it is, whatever you started the fast, you finish, you put the drink down. That's not a big deal, right? 12 hours later, oh, well, now you're starting to feel it. Now it takes more resolve. 24 hours later, wow, now you have headaches. The value of you not eating 24 hours later is not because you're not eating then, 24 hours later. It's because you stopped eating a day before. That gives the value to the fact you're not eating now. The value is in the aschala, is in the beginning. Behind you, in the back, achoraim. Remember, we are trying to fight an enemy who is leeching us from the achoraim, from the back. So we have to apply to this a kind of weapon that is working on the principle of achoraim. That weapon is fasting. Fasting is getting its value from the beginning. Let's say you're fasting 2 days, 48 hours. You're not eating. That's obviously much more powerful than just 24 hours, right? But the not eating is the same as the not eating after 24 hours. So what's the big deal? After 48 hours, did you not eat? What's the big deal? Oh, the big deal is because of the very beginning. The beginning was 48 hours before. In other words, in order to see the value of what you're doing now, you have to look at the aschala, you don't look at the back. What happens if you're fasting for 3 days? 72 hours. The value of not eating at the 72nd hour is because you started 72 hours earlier. the further along you get with your tinus, the more value it gets, because you have to go back to the beginning. When did you start it? What happens if you begin, you cheat, in the middle, you cheat, you take a glass of water, you're drinking. Now, everybody thinks he's fast. Look at him, he's fasting already 4 days. He's not drinking, he had a little popcorn, I'll drink a little bit.
What is the surprise for those with much
Rabbeinu fasted for a whole week. Okay, but Rabbeinu was not the only one. People fasted from, week to week, and achiname.
Week with no food, all food,
Yeah.
no food?
Mm-hmm. That's anyhow. So the value of what you're doing now is always going back to when did you start it? If you're already fasting for 4 days and you cheated in the middle, let's say 4 days, 2 days ago, you ate something, you drank something. So the real spiritual value of the fact that you're not eating now is not 4 days ago. That's not when you started fasting, because you ate in the middle. So the value is only just 2 days. When's the last time you ate? So the Indian of tinus is always about going back to the beginning. When did it start? Rabbeinu says as follows: the main schus, the main merit of the tinus, when we calculate the hours since you started fasting. That's how the value of the fast is calculated. The more hours, the longer that you fast, you always. The mashal k'shemisan shnei yomim, when a person fasts for 2 days. Hayom hasheni, shu nechshav b'yoser, the second day is much more important than the first day. Then the second day, is coming out as more important. Why? Because you're going back to the first day that you started to second day. Now it's 48 hours. 48 hours, it's much more difficult than 24 hours. Why is it more difficult? Because you're going back to when you started. Look when you started. You started 40 hours ago. Of course, it's more important than 24 hours that fast. It's 48. You have to go back to the beginning. It says the Sheni, the second day, is considered a bigger merit, as a bigger schus, because the first day. Because when did you start? Because we're going back to the first day, to when we started. That's why the second day is considered to have more value. Already 2 days. Wow. That's one thing. Also, there's another reason for that. It's just not just the length of time that you're already not eating. That's one thing. And he says there's another thing. He says the main thing, the main thing of everything, the main value, the most difficult thing of everything is the beginning. All the beginnings are difficult. That's the Mechilta in Yisrael. Rashi says. Why? Why is the beginning so difficult? Rabbeinu says, until now, a person was fry, then he becomes from. The very beginning, to make the decision From now I'm going to be Shomer Shabbos. That's what the difficulty is. Once you keep one Shabbos, second Shabbos, third Shabbos, okay, it becomes routine. It's not that difficult, right? But the very beginning, the first one, you say, you know something, I'm going to be Shomer Shabbos. You're dying for a cigarette. Ah. I have a friend that used to work in, he wasn't working. He was a volunteer to teach Torah in the jail system. And one of the Arabs there, yeah, jails, of course, the Arabs there. They had one Arab guy, a young guy, whose mother was Jewish. You know, they have that kind of thing. Shemirachim. So he knew that he was Jewish. But the Arabs is considered Arab, but the Jews is considered Jewish. So he came to his shurim. And he decided he wanted to become a Shomer Shabbos. Now this guy, this Jew, who grew up as an Arab, was part of a very big crime family. By the Arabs, you know, they're big crime families. And he said he can do anything except not smoke. Cigarettes. He can't. So my friend said, listen, I don't own Shabbos. I cannot give you a permission. It's not my permission to give you. He says, but I can give you an advice. What is it? He says, you want to smoke a cigarette? Don't lash it out. We're doing on Yom Tov, you know, it's like, don't lash it out. Just put it down. Well, I mean, you'll be smoking, but at least you won't put it out. One less Isser. One less Isser. When he came to see him the next week, the guy said, you don't know what you did to me. The minute that he put the cigarette down, he didn't lash it out, is he couldn't light another cigarette. He just couldn't do it emotionally. He just couldn't light another cigarette. He already did something. He made a aschala. It already awakened in him that he couldn't smoke anymore. The minute he just put the cigarette down, he just didn't lash it out. That's all. He didn't put it out. Already, here, how can I light up another cigarette? It's awesome. The most hardest thing is the beginning. You go from being one way to being another way. But after the beginning, then you become used to it. It becomes more routine. It's not so difficult for him. Every single day that you are becoming further and further away from the beginning, it becomes easier. You're more used to it. In fact, if you ask somebody who's a Shomer Shabbos, for us, it would be unthinkable. It's easier to be Shomer Shabbos than Chas v'Chalila not. It's easier for us to put on film in the morning than Chas v'Chalila not to put film in the morning. How could we not put a film? We freak out all day long. Have you got film? Have you got film? Let's say a person's feeling is misplaced, whatever it is. You go begging, knocking, say, do me a favor, let me have your film. I was like, yeah, but you can't do it because you have to, fix the kesher of the head. It's not the same. You're trying to find all the kind of, one day not to miss film. But in the beginning, person didn't put on film. Now he starts putting film. the more you go into the habit, you already put in film for a long time. It becomes an obvious thing. It's automatic. That's what you do. So he says, Nimtza says, the further you go from the beginning, the easier it becomes, because you become used to it. Nimtza shika koach avodah shel kol hayomim, the main koach of all the avodah you did in all those days, eino ela bascholet, all is in the beginning. That's the seed that you planted. You had to switch being one way to being another way. You have to go back to the first day when you started understanding that this is what you need to do and you started fasting. There's a tchilas tshuva, that's the beginning of the tshuva. The beginning was hard on him. You went from being one way, to flipping over to being a different way. Every single day, you're going back. It receives its koyach in the very beginning. And because these ministers are close in the dibur, but that throat, they go ahead and they drag the dibur to Golus Mitzrayim, to the exile, the straits of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is Metzar Yam. This is the straits. Metzar Agoran. That's what this is. The Ram is al Metzar Agoran, the straits of the Goran. The Goran is narrower from the shoulders, from the head. Chinas nichar groini. I'm hoarse. The spiritual horses that we're talking about is that you are not able to speak dibur the kedusha before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the real hoarseness. Not this. That's not the real hoarseness. That's the physical hoarseness. Spiritual hoarseness is when you have perfectly nice voice, but you cannot speak before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now that tinus, shemariv tatzma, when a person makes himself hungry, with a tinus, umamshich meimeh chasodim lachleach esagoran. You are bringing about the spiritual water of chesed to wet up the dryness of the spiritual throat. Then you'll be able to talk, you'll be able to speak before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeh as we said in Bereshit, when you take a look how the Torah writes it, then you'll see everything is in there. V'yirav ba'aretz, there was hunger in the land. He's talking about Avraham Avinu. He came to Israel. What happened? There was hunger in the V'yirav ba'aretz. Kirav, hunger, is Pchinas Tainus, fasting. Shemar besatzma, you're making yourself hungry. That means that is when you're sealing off the hind side of the kedusha. You are putting a cover on the garbage can. You are making food inaccessible to the vermin, to the clippers, when you're fasting. They call it dveikus achorei kedusha. Ironically, how do you do it? By putting meimeh chasadim to wet up the dryness of the goring. Physically, you're doing the opposite. You're not eating. You're making yourself hungry. Spiritually, you're providing meimeh chasadim, waters of chesed, to wet up, to moisten the dry throat, the spiritual dry throat, that enables the you can also understand the dryness that we're talking about. We spoke about the allure of sports or bad thoughts. What is the attractiveness? Is because we feel thirsty. The people feel thirsty. They need, so how are they going to fill out this thirst? They're going to go to a ball game. They feel a spiritual thirst. We'll replace it. The Klippa says, I have got to go. Go ahead. Watch a football game. Watch a baseball game. Whatever it is, or have these kind of thoughts. You won't feel you won't feel your thirst, your spiritual thirst anymore. But that's really the opposite of real sustenance, the Kedusha, right? So that's the dveikus of the back of the Kedusha. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week we will explain how this is expressed in Kedusha of Havaya Elokim B'Choraim. This is what we'll do next week. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming. Otherwise, I would be here.
Turn to Tailas Achila, no?
What?
Same
thing. Tailas Achila also lessens the ability to speak to Kodesh Baruch Hu. It comes from the Klippa because people eat for emotional reasons, right? It means they feel a thirst, emotional thirst, spiritual thirst. So they're substituted with a physical, with a fake thing. In the meantime, so you feel it with food, but it doesn't. The pleasure hides the fact that, it's like drugs. What do drugs do? Drugs just cover up the fact that you feel pain. That you feel thirsty. Dryness is the opposite of that, and it actually solves the problem in the very source. That's a B'chinas Acharoim. The thirst is Acharoim. Klipos, they receive their thing from the Acharoim. Sustenance from the Acharoim, from the garbage can. You solve it by repairing the problem of Acharoim from the very root. That's what we're talking about. It's a very, very sophisticated and profound concept. That's the reason why we are repeating it and going through it again and again and again until B'ezrat Hashem, it will sit inside us when we'll be able to finish the Torah. Hashem is Baruch. Hashem come to Uman with a Torah, Likutey Moharan, B'ezrat Hashem, Torah Samach Beis, Kenai Lahara. Hashem Yazor, B'ezrat Hashem. And just.
What you're saying brings to mind a memory.